Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
Welcome back. This week we celebrate the 50th episode of Solo. To do so, I invite back two friends, Kim Terabile and Julie Nervelli, who joined me on episode 1, An Introduction to Solo. I start by presenting how far the project has come, from the exponential listener growth fueled by your word of mouth, to the new Instagram handle, unapologetically_unattached. That's right, it's a long one. That's unapologetically, that little underscore thing, unattached. Then Julie, Kim, and I revisit the themes I set out for at the beginning of the podcast. We discuss our favorite episodes, and we talk about where the project is headed. As always, please rate and review, tell your friends and family, and most importantly, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let's get started. Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's first guest is Julie Nervelli. Julie was born and raised in San Jose, California, and earned her college degree from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She has lived in Colorado for 16 years. As a strong, independent, and fun-loving person, Julie embraces the solo life. She appeared in episode 10, What Makes a Life Remarkable, and episode 18, Solo Entrepreneurship. Welcome back, Julie.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Today's second guest is Kim Terabile. Kim is a writer and entrepreneur. She is the solo founder of Wax Crescent, a candle company focused on the idea of self-care and intentional living. Kim holds a degree in English literature from the University of Hawaii. She is single and lives in Boulder, Colorado with her 2 dogs. Kim was a guest co-host in episode 4, Why Are Superheroes Single? Welcome back, Kim.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Now, in addition to the previously mentioned episodes, listeners may remember both of you from episode 1, An Introduction to Solo, which is why I invited you back here today, 50 episodes later. And I want to assess... Yes. I'm still alive. Help me. That's a major accomplishment these days. So I want to talk about how it's going and where Solo's headed. Okay? So here's our agenda. We're going to start by looking back at episode 1 and revisit some of the themes for the podcast. And then I asked the two of you to bring forth your 3 favorite episodes since then that we'll talk about. And then we're going to finish with a conversation about where Solo is headed as a podcast and beyond. So, good. You two good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
You've done your homework.
I didn't re-listen to episode 1. That's been a long time ago, it seems
That's
like.
fine. I did for all of us, so I have the stuff.
Good.
So before that, I want to give listeners and the two of you an update on what's been happening. You know, it's actually surprisingly difficult to figure out listener counts. So like Google Podcasts and iTunes and so on, they don't publish that stuff. So you have to kind of figure it out. So one piece of information I have from the company that I use is as of the taping, so this will be higher and it could be much higher by the time this comes out, 110,000 downloads.
Wow.
Yes.
That's impressive.
That feels kind of impressive, especially because I do no promotion of this podcast, right? So, I mean, I put it on social media and stuff, but like no one follows me, right? So it's you know what I mean? It's not there. All to my knowledge.
I know how it's growing. It's all of us listeners. When we go on dates, we tell people about it.
That's true. I had a listener who went on 3 dates in one day and told each of the dates about Solo. So I think you're right, Julie. There's a ton of word of mouth. I can't tell you the number of people who said, "Oh, I've told 10 people about this thing."
Yeah, I know. I definitely have.
How many dates have you been on in one day, Kim? And how many of those dates have you told?
The most was 2, but I did 6 in 1 week a couple weeks ago.
All right, well done.
Wow.
How many people do you think that each of you have told?
I've told probably a dozen because I wanted them all to listen to me on episode 1. I told everyone who follows me on social media.
Also, yes.
Well, that's true. But personal recommendation, probably 15 to ish. Yeah.
So that's the first place I think people are finding out about it. And the other one, and I think I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. We did a live Zoom call, and there was a woman, if you're listening, forgive me, I don't know your age, but maybe late 30s. She could have been early 40s, but somewhere between 35 and 42, I'm guessing. She heard about it from her 22-year-old nephew.
Wow.
Right. So that's crazy that those two demographics are both listening. The other place is search. So I ask people if they send me a note about how, how they're enjoying it. And I say, how did you hear about it? And they say, oh, their friend told me, or they say, oh, I just was searching in iTunes or, through podcasts and so on. And so, so that has me excited. I'm going to get serious about promoting this. There was a big jump in listenership in late July and another one in early September. And I don't know why. Like, it's not because I had some really famous person on, but something happened around those times. And 2/3 of the listens have happened since July. And so this soft launched at the end of December 2019, and the real launch was sort of the first week in January. And so there's like nonlinear effects that are happening. So that's pretty good. Sound quality is up, at least for the sound quality was, I think, pretty good generally when we were all in person. But because now almost everything is remote, I've really gotten much better about microphones, internet quality, coaching my guests, and so on. So I want to thank everyone I don't think our sound quality was ever terrible, but it was less than ideal. And so thanks to everyone for making it through that. We've had some sponsors. So we had Rapture Masks as a sponsor. So this is a machine washable antimicrobial mask that is pretty sweet. I wear my Rapture mask all the time. Pro tip, get the white one, get the upgraded one if it's better, especially if you have a nice long face like I do. And then we had Kim has been a sponsor. Now this hasn't come out yet, but she sponsored one episode, and which is very exciting. So Wax Crescent candles, and I even plug, Kim, your mandals, your man candles.
Yeah, there's more mandals coming. Get ready, people.
I think that's great. I like a good candle. Also, fall's coming, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
But these are no ordinary candles. They are like the coolest candles ever.
Yeah,
they have little surprises in them.
It's true. It is actually very true. So that was on the What the Buck episode with Michael Buckley, one of our remarkable singles. I've been doing a monthly Zoom call. I keep screwing up the right time and date to get it done, but so if you sign up at the solo page on petermcgraw.org, you can get your email when there's going to be a monthly Zoom call. And that's been great. I love the monthly Zoom calls because you get to see people, meet people who are listeners and get feedback, and people have gotten connected. So at the last Zoom call, someone in San Diego, Salt Lake City, and Milan all got connected. And that I think is really good. And then speaking of connecting, I have launched a forum on petermcgraw.org, and it has been a total failure. And so it's not user friendly. It's not getting any traction. And so I am shuttering it. I'm going to be shuttering it, but we're going to be doing a Slack channel.
Ugh.
I was just going to say, what about a Slack channel or something like that?
We are going to do a Slack channel, but however, it's going to be invite only. So you have to apply to be part of the Solo community on Slack. And if you go to petermcgraw.org on the Solo page, you will be able to do that by the time this thing comes out. I have also finally launched an Instagram page, Unapologetically Unattached. And it has a little underscore between unapologetically and unattached. And I realized that is the longest Instagram handle out there.
I love it, though.
I like it, too. It's getting mixed reviews, but that is happening. So please look for us there. I'll be obviously doing episode announcements on there. I like my good old inspirational quotes and cheekiness, but we're also going to be doing profiles, Solo community member profiles. And Julie is going to be the first one.
Yeah.
So you can see what she looks like. And Kim will be coming down the road. I promise, Kim. I'm not going to leave you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'll wait my turn.
You wait your turn. Get a high quality photo.
Okay, perfect.
Solo-like photo in the meantime.
Yeah, that's my holdup.
So things are happening. It's pretty exciting. It feels good. I'm spending more time than ever on this thing.
Gee, I wonder why.
Way more time. Way more time than I did my previous podcast, but it's just like the feedback keeps coming in. I'm just having a great time.
Yeah, it has momentum, you know.
It has momentum, and also we'll get into it a little bit later, but as we talk about moving forward, some of the things that are happening that I think are kind of exciting. So it's off to a good start. I'm going to keep doing. I'll do at least 50 more. I'm certain of that. We're going to do the podcast like you should do a marriage, which is like, you know, you do it for a while and then you sit and assess. All right, this is going pretty well. Let's keep doing this, you know, and then
eventually it's time for it to end.
Yes, right? Like I won't, you know, so that kind of thing. Okay, let's talk about episode 1. So I re-listened to the episode. It's okay that you two haven't. And I just want to revisit some of the themes that were in that episode. So what I wanted to do with the podcast was to have a discussion of the benefits, opportunities, and pitfalls of solo living. So I wanted to have experts on nutrition, finance, fashion. So Kim outed me about my stylist. I Yeah. Well, you didn't really out me. I was planning to have her on at some point. So you just previewed it, yeah. I think.
It was a little teaser.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, I could have edited your teasing of my teaser out there. I've even talked to a barber. So we've had kind of a wide range of experts. And then I also wanted to talk to remarkable singles. So, you know, I had an episode with Lisa Slavitt, climbing her second mountain, Jill Cohen with you, Julie, about what makes a life remarkable. As I mentioned earlier, the What the Buck episode with Michael Buckley, who is a former YouTube star, now turned coach. So here are the themes. I just want you to respond to these. Like, you know, you guys are regular listeners. Do you think we're hitting the mark so far with these? So the first one is that I wanted the project to be positive. Like I wanted to have a positive view. There's a lot of single stuff that's very whiny, complainy. Look how bad things are. I want to celebrate singlehood. I don't want to be anti-marriage. What do you think so far?
I think so. I mean, I love listening to your podcast. I think it's been, I'm going to get all emotional, one of the biggest inspirations of this last year for me. It's such a positive and empowering thing that you're doing. You know, you're celebrating the solo life and what it means and the freedoms that are associated with it. And I tune in and I listen, and every time I'm done with an episode, I feel I'm getting chills right now. I just feel so incredibly empowered and grateful that I finally, for the first time in my life, feel like there's a community of people who are able to model the lifestyle that I want.
Oh, Kim.
Wow. I cannot top that comment.
I was like going to cry.
That's really wonderful. Julie's like, Yeah, it's positive.
No, I think it has been positive, and I know. Oh yeah, I was going to say something unrelated to positivity, but yes, I think it's been very positive. And as we mentioned earlier, the listeners, if it was whiny and all of that, it wouldn't be growing and getting the support it's getting. So I think it's been a great tone.
I feel like initially one of the things you set out to do, I remember either during recording episode 1 or before we started taping, you were like, I don't want this to be something where we're bashing married people or people in relationships. And the fact that you have so many listeners that are in relationships and are married, it just shows, you're creating this thing. Yes, it's celebrating singlehood, but it's also something for anyone who wants to be independent and empowered in their life.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Again, because I'm not anti-marriage. I just think it's overprescribed, right? So I'm just not sure that 9 out of 10 people should do it, or even, 3 out of every 4, or that you should be trying to do it all the time for your whole life. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that they're complementary, that in that way. It's just that one shouldn't have special status. I do feel that I have gotten a little more serious since the beginning. Now, some of that's the COVID stuff. Some of it is because now that there's thousands of people listening, that I feel more pressure to perform. And so...
You're not having performance anxiety, are you?
No. I could take a blue pill for that. But no, but I have been prepping a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I feel like I got to stick to this script. I got to stick to this agenda. And so that's something that I'm feeling a little bit, but I don't know if anyone else has noticed it. The world's gotten a little more serious also. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of that. So that's something I want to kind of move back to, a little bit more fun and lightness.
Mm-hmm. I like that idea, because thinking back to episode 1, we laughed a lot. We were cracking jokes and we laughed a lot, and not that hasn't happened, but I do feel like that was a really light episode.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. So the second one is that I want the podcast, the project, to be inspirational. And so I think, Kim, you just touched on that a little bit. So for example, I had mentioned Lisa Slavitt as one of our remarkable singles. I think that Lisa's Second Mountain episode is one of those things that here's someone who's sort of retiring early, becoming a digital nomad, in her 50s. And that's a big thing, and I think to the degree that we can inspire people to live better lives, that, the guests, the experts, and me can do that. I think that I think there are enough, episodes you can point to that have that inspirational quality, but tell me.
Well, and I think inspiring people to think outside the box, right? I mean, there are so many opportunities to do some really amazing off the beaten path things. And I think a lot of people are limited to their exposure of what those opportunities can be. And so listening to these amazing people you have, and even if you don't want to become a traveling nurse like Jill was, that maybe there's some other traveling profession you can do, or you can take your own profession. And now that people work remotely so much, when we can start to travel again, maybe you can incorporate that. So I just think it's innovative and sparks new ideas.
Yes. The next one was stretching oneself, this idea of living on your edge. And so putting yourself in a situation where you're not overly stressed, but you're also not bored, right? You're constantly challenging yourself. So I think about the episode on psychedelics as a potentially stretching thing for someone to try, that it might inspire them to do something like that on a more, maybe a less of a stretch, might be like the boxing episode. Might you go and try a boxing class? I've never punched anything before. What would that be like? And so on. So I like that idea of stretching oneself. And I think if you're going to embrace single living, it's going to be a natural stretch, right? In a world built for married people, it's going to naturally stretch your comfort zone because of the conversations that you're going to have, and the people you're going to encounter, and the opportunities that you're going to have. Okay. I want it to be broad, not just about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've had some relationship focused episodes and they've been fun, but I don't think anyone's going to say this skews too heavy on sex and dating and relationships.
Yeah, it's been a small percentage, I feel like, of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. You have to cover those topics, and especially
it's
because
part of single living, or can be for some people, not for everybody, but
yeah, or even if even just because a relationship, even how do you fit relationships into being single? How do you stand in contrast to a marriage relationship, and how do you navigate this? I think that's one of those. But I don't want this to be about this is not a sex and dating this is not a series in that way. Next, I want it to be inclusive. So I want it to be applicable for both men and women. So obviously I'm conscious of the fact that I'm a male host and creator and producer of this. And so I've worked very hard to have that inclusiveness reflected in guests and co-hosts. So not just in terms of gender, but also age and other forms of diversity, sexual orientation, and so on. But that's something that is on my, it's sort of on my radar. It's something that I'm trying to pursue. And I think we're off to a good start. One of my listeners who's a friend, he said to me, he kind of was giving me a hard time about some of the pictures on my website of some of the guests. And so then I sent him an analysis of the diversity of all of the stuff. And he said, Pete, the fact that you're paying attention is enough for me. You're trying. So.
Nice. Do you get those kind of stats about listeners, the gender and age and things like that?
No, I just have country. So it's obviously this is big in the United States, followed by like Canada, UK, Australia. So, I mean, that's not surprising, I think. But, occasionally I have like one listener in Guatemala or something like that. So you get some of that. And then the last one is I want to build community. So I don't want this just to be a podcast that is one direction, just broadcasting out into the world, but I want to give singles a chance to talk to each other and get to know each other. And so the Zoom calls have been an initial foray into that. This
Slack
community. The Slack channel will be the next step. And so
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, COVID has put a kibosh on any events for now, but I could imagine eventually having events, in big cities.
That would be really fun.
Yeah. I think Denver or Los Angeles will be like probably the first place that I would do something like that. So overall, I think it was fun to listen back at those themes. And I think it's important to have themes, to have goals. And it was a good reminder to see how far we've come in 50 episodes.
Yeah. And is it what you thought it would be when you set out to start it? You had this idea in mind, and it does seem to be what you thought it would be.
Yeah, it's I'm a big believer in, I love my one-pagers. I like to write a one-pager for a project, and I think that if you do that well, it gives the project a tone. It helps create language, and obviously it presents guidance. So you're going to rely on that. So when I think about the one-pager that I wrote for Solo, and then I look back on these themes, and then I look at the execution, it's fitting pretty well. I would say at times it feels a little haphazard, like it kind of bounces around a bit. You don't quite know what you're going to get every week. And I don't know if that's a feature or a bug. So I guess in general, Kim, you've already previewed this, so maybe this will be a little bit more for Julie. But let me ask, how have you been affected by the project and by your participation in it? Obviously, you two have been heavily involved as guests or guest co-hosts to this point. So when you think about it overall, before we get into these episodes, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think it's just really expanded my thinking about how to be in the world as a solo person. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And it's definitely shifted my thought process about that. And one of the episodes that we'll get into, I can share a little more about that. But, and as far as my participation in it, I think it's been really uplifting and fun to be involved. And I was telling my neighbor that I was going to be recording this afternoon, and she said, "Congratulations!" And I was like, "Well, it's my friend's podcast," but I've had a couple people say that, like, it's such a cool idea, and I think it's congratulations that you're involved with something so cool, because it's just such a unique idea. So I love thinking about it and giving my feedback and participating. So thank you for including me.
Well, I appreciate both of you so much. From the very beginning, the encouragement offline, and then obviously the encouragement online. One of the things that's so fascinating about doing this podcast is the number of ideas I get. So I just wrote down, there's lots of ways to be single versus sort of one way to be married. So when you think about it, like, this is that, I always talk about optionality, that singles have more options, and that's both a blessing and a curse, right? Because it can create uncertainty. I don't know what to do, versus when you head down the sort of traditional conventional route, the relationship escalator, you know exactly what to do, and you kind of have a sense of the timeline, and so on. So I like that idea that there are lots and lots of ways to do singlehood, so to speak, and thankfully lots and lots of ways to do it well. And that's really what the goal is how to thrive. There. How about you, Kim? Anything you want to add from your tearful acceptance speech?
I know. Well, I'm just, every time you ask me to be on this, I'm shocked, because I'm very new to the single life. I've been in relationships, long-term relationships since I was like 16. So I feel like as you're kind of starting this project, I was kind of, a year into a solo lifestyle. So I feel like I'm still learning and I'm still gaining my footing in this world. And this, podcast is just showing me all the different experiences I can have, all the different things I can do. I feel like everything you've talked about are things that I've kind of experimented with and kind of, tried out, like from entrepreneurship to figuring out how to go on a date to, just traveling alone. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I don't think it has to be. I think it's good. It's good to have a voice like the two of you, so that you're not experts. You're real people living it. You're in the trenches, so to speak. And so I think that's great. And you both have good voices, so that takes care of like most of it. So let's get into these episodes. So I asked each of you to prepare your 3 favorite episodes. I've also done that for myself. And then I said, all right, you should tell me what they are just so I can be prepared. And all 3 of us had one episode on our list. So I think we should talk in common. We all separately made our lists, and we all had the same episode on it. And that episode is The Relationship Escalator.
Yeah. Oh, well, I changed mine after you guys said you were going to do that. But that was initially one of mine. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about that episode, because I think that's like talking about having your view of the world changed. So why, Kim, did you put it on your list at first? At
first, just because I thought it was just so important. It was, that's what I was raised with. That's what you do. That's all I knew. And listening to that episode, I was like, wait, there's other ways to go about this. There's other things I can do with my life. I don't have to find a partner and go through life with them.
Yeah. So let's step back for a second. So in the Relationship Escalator, Amy Guerin, you want to talk about this, Julie? Amy Guerin sets forth this model by which to think about the sort of prototypical relationship in society.
Right. Yes. And as you can imagine, it's the escalator, you're on it and you get off at the top, which is till death do us part, right? Or that type of idea. And then what I really liked about Amy was it just opened your mind so much about various ways to be solo in the world. I mean, she was talk about inclusivity when you were saying that was one of your goals. That's what I thought of was all of her ideas. And I mean, I'm just so naive when it comes to all of that. And so it was just really interesting to me to hear various ways and different ideas.
Yeah. So in this episode, she talks about these characteristics of the relationship escalator. So consistency, right? You start with the person, you finish with the person. There's no in between people. You're monogamous. You merge your lives, your finances, your living arrangements, and so on. And this relationship has special status. So that partner is granted special status in your life. So for example, you get invited to a wedding, people expect you to bring your relationship escalator partner, not your friend from second grade, so these kinds of things. And then what she does with this model and with her book, and then we talked about on the podcast, is when you start deviating from those characteristics, you start to become unconventional. And Amy lives an unconventional life. So she's what you would call solo poly. So she lives alone, but she has two, as she calls them, sweeties. Right. And those two people,
that's such a good phrase.
Yeah. Those two people are not they're not in a relationship with each other. They're connected to each other through her. And so that obviously is quite non-standard, but it works quite well for Amy. And Amy actually had lived the relationship escalator. She had been married earlier in her life. And
what was interesting is, of her two sweethearts, one chose to be monogamous with her and the other is not.
Yes. And so what I think is really cool, that's where we get to this thing. There's one way to be married, but there's an infinite number of ways to be single, right? So you can be, or solo, first of all, that's the other thing. The follow-up is this sort of solo mentality that you don't even need to be single to have this sort of autonomous view of how you want yourself to be in the world. What else? What are the reasons why that became one of your episodes for the two of you?
Well, the idea about even if you have a partner or multiple partners, that in her world, you make decisions, life decisions, based on what's best for you, and you're not necessarily consulting another person or making life decisions jointly with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she said one of her partners was planning on retiring on an island somewhere. I don't remember where, but he's not going to let his relationship with her stop that lifelong dream of his. And so I just thought that was interesting too, to be more solo in that way.
Yeah. And also, what's really sort of uplifting about that is if he does that, that doesn't make the relationship a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if you strip away consistency as one of the characteristics, right? If you loosen that constraint, then if their relationship ends because he moves to a desert island, there's no grieving. There's no law, they haven't failed. Mm-hmm. in that sense. Just because a relationship ends doesn't mean that's bad. That, I think, is a huge idea. The idea that relationships might have their place in time or place in space. Mm-hmm. And because something moves someone out of that space, or because they change, whatever happens, and it ends, doesn't mean that there's any failure. If anything, this might end because of a moment of growth that happens. I think also the idea of, for example, if we could license people to not necessarily live together, they might be happier. I mean, how much stress comes from the fact that you have to share a space with someone who you may love and care about and love spending time with, but your lifestyle is different. Your hours are different. Your messiness is different. Your temperature preferences are different.
I have a friend, her mom and her mom's husband live across the street from each other.
Yes. And again, I think that's great, but the rest of the world's like, what's going on over there? You know, and that's I think the thing that's exciting about once you understand the escalator, then you could start thinking about how you're going to tweak the characteristics of the escalator to have relationships that make you happy, even if they make other people uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. And that's what Amy was saying too, is once you're non-conventional, people, it's like boggles their mind. Like, wait, what do you mean? How do I process this? I don't understand that. And so I thought that was interesting too.
And I think what ends up happening is you end up having, so at best you have some conversations, which you have to do a little bit of teaching and educating. Like if someone approaches it with an open mind. And certainly if you're comfortable with it, again, with those unconventional relationships, you know, you don't have to be on the defensive. What bothers me is so many single people are on the defensive.
Yeah.
So many solos are playing. They're like, they're trying to explain this away because the type of questions that they're getting have all this value associated with them. So it's not just, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me understand? It's like, why don't you live with your husband? Right? There's a big difference to saying, hey, you're the first person I've met who doesn't live with their partner. Why do you guys do that? Right?
Tell me more about that.
That's a great way to approach that question versus why don't you guys live together?
And a good answer would be because I don't want to get divorced or because I want to stay married.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one conversation you have to have with someone, an uncomfortable conversation about your lifestyle choice. And the rest of the time, you're happy with your lifestyle choice.
That's right. Yes. And I think there are ways, I'm going to do an entire episode on these kind of conversations and how to have them. So one of the previous guests, Chris Marsh, she dropped this gem into an episode where when someone asks, you know, why aren't you married? Kim, you're 36 years old. Why aren't you married? And she said, what do you mean by that? That's her response. What do you mean by that? And the person goes, you know, why aren't you married? No, I mean, what do you mean by that? And she says, most people just drop it.
Yeah.
At that point. But some people get it. Like it clicks for them. And they go, oh, yeah. And she's like, you don't have to be aggressive. And I was like, oh. And it's sort of sad that we have to do this education about how to have conversations about this. But we do, because there's the conventional and then there's the unconventional that's there. But I agree with you, too. It's such an empowering idea. And it's so licensing once you start understanding, because what it can say is, well, person A is happy to have a relationship, but they're just not into monogamy. Person B might want monogamy, but they don't want to live together. You know, person C is not interested in a lifelong partnership. You know, like a year and a half is good for them. And then the other one is if you strip away the special status, then all three of those types of relationships are meaningful, are valuable, and are worthwhile for the people in them, assuming that they both want that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anything to add for the relationship escalator one?
Not from me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kim, what was the one that you substituted for the relationship escalator?
I substituted the entrepreneurship. So I did Do you want me to tell you what they were?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I did the Kristen Newman, What I Was Doing While You Were Breeding.
Okay. Let's talk about that one.
Okay. I love that one.
That's a great title.
I love that one. I think I listened to it like 5 times.
Really?
Well, she has a really cool voice too.
Okay.
So she's like super entertaining. And that one, it was interesting to listen to that because you had done that before you had released any of, it was like number 5. So you had no idea what solo was or what it could be. So you even talked in it. You're like, I have no idea what's going to happen with this podcast, but let's just do it. And then here we are, number 50.
Nice. So what is it that you liked about that one so much?
So my biggest takeaway, and I have this on my paper, like written in bold, was just make the most of this time. Like make the most of when you're single. Because I don't know if this is going to be forever. I don't know like I could meet someone and be swept off my feet, or I could decide this is the life I want, but just like really enjoy this time and, explore and have adventures.
And for people who haven't listened to that episode yet, so Kristen Newman is a comedy writer in Los Angeles, and in her kind of 30s, mostly through her 30s, what happens a lot of times if you work in Hollywood, you basically kill yourself on a project for X months, and then you take a vacation. Like, it's a very common thing in Hollywood. It's not like the normal 9 to 5 for 50 weeks a year and then a 2-week vacation. It's like, 9 to 9, for months at a time, and then you just take off for a substantial period of time. And so she traveled a lot. She traveled in South America a lot and Europe and so on. And she fooled around. So she met men in these different places and had relationships. And she had a lot of fun. She traveled with girlfriends sometimes. And the book's a very funny book. It's called What I Was Doing While You Were Breeding, while all her other friends were starting families and getting married and so on. And to your point, she actually later did marry and have kids. So she's now living to my knowledge, the relationship escalator. Who knows? You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's right now. That's connected to this idea that I like to say, for now or forever. So it doesn't have to be that one. Anything else about that one, Kim?
I just liked it because it was, as a female, sometimes I want to go on vacation and I don't necessarily have a partner to go with. And a lot of my friends at this point are married or they have children and can't go. So I think it was just like, and I like to travel alone, but I usually go back to the same places that I've already been. So just this idea of just go. And she gives a lot of like awesome tips on how to meet people when you're traveling solo and like, so go back, listen to the episode, get those tips. But I thought it was really fun and super empowering, and I can't wait to take a trip once COVID's over.
So, one of the things that I remember her saying is, I think it's easier now with the dating apps, but as a woman, you actually have to do a little bit more work if you want to get the attention of a man. When you're out and about. Like she was sort of talking about how sometimes, like, first of all, how that doesn't feel natural to do that, and the other one is like how sort of forthright you need to be, because a lot of times people don't approach you. They won't talk to you, and so on. Especially now in a world of dating apps, because that's where like the go-to is. Well, that was a good one. I enjoyed the conversation. What's that?
Yeah, that was a good episode. I had planned a solo trip last December to go to Oaxaca, Mexico, which had been somewhere I'd wanted to go forever. And I had found this really cool hostel, and they had rooftop activities every evening. They had a walking tour of the city at 10 o'clock every morning. So you could just get plugged right in to a group of other people traveling alone. And I had a friend jump in 10 days before and say he wanted to join me. And he's one of my best friends. So he was like, I am not staying in a hostel. But we did the walking tour of the city, and we had such a blast and met so many great people that we ended up hanging out with together on the rest of our trip. But I do want to plan a solo trip when we're able to start really traveling again.
Good. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I can imagine you wanting to go back or wanting to go somewhere like that again and try to recreate that on your own.
Yes, I think that would be a blast.
So what are one of the episodes on your list besides Relationship Escalator?
Well, the ethical non-monogamy episode, again, like the Relationship Escalator, was really eye-opening for me in terms of how to think about things differently and just open your mind to other options. And I had a friend, we've talked about this before on another episode. I created a Facebook group for singles in my area. Not from my perspective, it was just to have more people to do things with, not to try to meet other people. So I invited everyone I knew who was single, and I had a friend email me and say, hey, I got your invitation. I'm in a relationship, but they don't seem to last long. So I'll let you know when that changes. 2 weeks later, he's like, okay, add me to the group. So I said, you should listen to the solo. It's awesome. And so we listened to episode number 1, and then he messaged me and said, should I go in order? Can I jump around? What do you recommend? And I said, ethical non-monogamy. And that's been my favorite episode. And this was fairly early on, but he was like kind of blown away by the concept of that as well. And I think it's just, again, like shaking people and saying there are other ways to do this where you can thrive and be happy and be in remarkable different kinds of relationships. I mean, even if you're just casually dating someone, that's quote unquote a relationship or a kind of relationship. And just thinking about different ways to navigate those and be open about them and communicate about them. And you know, Pete, one of your themes that I love that comes up in so many episodes is ask for what you want. Mm-hmm. You can't get what you want necessarily if you don't ask for it. And that was one of my big takeaways from that ethical non-monogamy was ask for what you want and be clear.
Yeah, it's connected. It's actually connected to the relationship escalator because the relationship escalator allows a period of non-monogamy while you're dating someone at first. You know, so you might be dating multiple people and fooling around with multiple people, but at some point you got to lock it down with one person. And right. So it's funny is like the model accommodates non-monogamy, but it has to be temporary and it has to be with a goal to not be non-monogamous. And so what I liked about that episode, and again, I think like sometimes some of this for me is like, all this just seems like, yeah, of course. Yeah, I know all this stuff now. But like, there have been times in my life where I go, oh my God. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. You know? And so one of the nice things about that episode is it gives you a language and it kind of gives you sort of principles. It's a primer, you know, it's just a start, you know, it's not, you know, this is not with someone who is like a full-on expert in this. It's not Dan Savage. This is just someone who lives ethically non-monogamous and does so in a way that works well for her and that she's really quite comfortable with it. And I think she does a good job of articulating that.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from that episode was just honesty was the word that kept coming up. And that was what was kind of on the forefront of how to do this in an ethical way. You know, you want to have, I think consideration was a word that was used a lot, but like consideration for your partners. And you don't want to be deceptive or lying. It's just being very open with your lifestyle and stating what you want and what you want out of your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's funny because I still shy away from anyone on a dating app who says ethically non-monogamous. I'm like, I just don't know how to handle that.
Or like
I have a partner looking for, you know, I'm just like, I don't know about this.
Well, it sounds like you
to go on a date with one of those people and see.
Yeah, I should.
You know, it would be a stretch, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
To just get more information and learn about that and tell me more about that.
Okay, that's my goal for this month.
Oh, you're gonna have to report back.
But Kim, make sure you're attracted to the person. You don't go out with a dog just to stretch yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't know in those dating app photos anyway.
It's a good point. It's a fair point. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so actually, Kim, I'm gonna have you give one of yours now, and then I'm gonna do one.
So my next favorite episode, and Julie, you were, I guess, a guest or co-host on this one, was Tips for the Solo Entrepreneur.
She was a guest, yes.
Yeah, because I have my own business that I started last year. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go, but there was some really nice little tidbits in there. I think my biggest takeaway, funny enough, was the one-pager. You give this tip, Pete, it's write it or regret it, I think is what you called it. And had I written a one-pager for my business before I started it, I probably wouldn't have a business.
Why do you say that?
Well, just, you know, even now when I was, you know, I don't have a lot of clarity on what I'm doing. And I realized I really need to sit down and become clear on what my focus is of my business and what I'm doing and who, you know, but I'm learning as I go. This is an experiment for me. And it's something, you know, you guys talked a lot about the difference between being a solo entrepreneur versus in a partnership. And I'm finding like I have a lot more time to dedicate to this than I would if I had a partner. And I have the financial freedom because I'm not paying for a child. I'm not paying for all the things that go along with married or partnered life. So, I'm throwing all that money away on candle making. But yeah, I don't know.
Wait, hold on. We're going to stop. We need to stop that negative self-talk because I think I'm thrilled. First of all, since I got to know you, Kim, you've had, I would say, 3 revolutionary things that have happened in your life.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. So, so the first one is that you have gotten really serious about your writing.
Yes, I have.
Right. So you have something that most writers don't have, and that's talent.
Oh,
so you have like natural talent, but you weren't taking advantage of it, and so you have really leaned into that creative work. The second thing is this launching this company that is taking steps to create something that's yours, that you don't have to rely on someone else to pay you, to hire you. You get to set your hours. You get to build something that's yours. Now, will it succeed? I don't know. But I think that even if it doesn't succeed, it's not a failure. Right? Just because a relationship breaks up doesn't mean it's a failure. And so and by the way, I actually think you have great products. Mm-hmm. I think you have great products. The candles are super cool. You do all these really neat things. I think it has potential. It's also stretching you. You're learning about running a business. So you have this very creative side, but you're also trying to develop this sort of more analytical, strategic business side.
Yeah.
The third thing I'm going to save for your next episode that you're going to talk about in a moment.
Okay.
All right. So third thing. So I just think that don't think of this as a waste of time in any way.
No, I mean, I don't. It's just like, it's new for me. It's like you said, stretching me. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I'm learning every day. I'm learning how to do everything on my own, from the marketing to building my own website to how to ship stuff, how to figure out how to ship stuff. Like this is probably one of the most valuable experiences of my life. It's teaching me so much, so my next business will be a success.
Well, you also just might be surprised. Sometimes, you start something that's sort of on the side and then.
Yeah.
So one of the things that in that episode with Julie and Darwin Metzger, we talked about was I'm going to do my best to remind it, but I talk about it as product, market, founder, fit. And so what you're looking for as an entrepreneur is the market speaking? That is, am I getting orders? Are people happy? Versus you having to push all the time.
Yeah.
I'm pushing, I'm convincing, I'm selling, I'm doing all this stuff. And so it seems to me that you have product market fit.
Can I comment on that?
Of course, yeah.
Kim's product. So I had Kim's candles already. And then when we went on lockdown with COVID, lighting a candle every day, one of Kim's candles, helped me feel grounded and peaceful and like warmth in my home. And it was like, became a ritual every morning. I was like, I'm lighting one of these candles. And it was really brought a lot of value in a time of what the hell is going on.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It's all the moon charged crystals I put in there. I do Reiki on the crystals before I put them in the candles. So
yeah. So like, this is the thing is, so Kim, like this is where the founder fit comes in. So for example, if I tried to launch Wax Crescent and I had potions and I would call them rocks. I threw some rocks in the candles, right? Like, you know what I mean? But no, you do, like, you actually walk the talk. Like you would, you know what I mean? You're doing all of this stuff that is consistent with your brand, with the type of product that people want and so on. Now, where the fit might not exist yet is that you are just not a natural entrepreneur. You're an artist first, you're not a business person in the way that Julie's, has turned into a really solid business person. She knows how to run a company. She knows how to build things. She knows how to market and sell and so on. You can learn that stuff.
Yeah, that's where Schmonday comes in.
Yes.
And I spelled it SCH. Just.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So for people who don't know the Schmonday joke, it's sort of late afternoon, evening on a Sunday where you might go into the office or crack open your laptop and kind of prepare for the week. Knock out a bunch of emails, go through your calendar, get some tasks done. So on Monday morning, you're not answering emails, but you're actually doing creative work. You're doing value-based work that's there. I spell Schmonday capital S, capital M, O-N-D-A-Y, but I pronounce it Schmonday.
I love it.
Anything else for the solo entrepreneur one, Kim?
I think just networking, like one of Julie's tips in the episode was form a community of other entrepreneurs and connect with them. And that's been huge for me, is just finding other women who have their own businesses and who are growing their own businesses, and really taking inspiration from them and, inspiring other people to create.
That's great.
And I think I don't remember saying this specifically in that episode, but when you have a partner, that is sometimes the person that you ramble on about your business and process your ideas, and just saying it out loud helps tremendously rather than just thinking about it in your brain. So that's why it's really important to have people that you can just have those conversations with and keep your thoughts churning and getting feedback and things like that. So.
Yeah, it's good. This idea of solo versus partnered as an entrepreneur is, I think, a really fascinating one. So that episode, I think, had just rock solid advice in general, regardless of which category you're in. But I think we did touch on how there's like the freedom, the optionality. If you want to work, if you want to work all day and night, you can do that. So this is connected to an episode that I did recently, where I was responding to this writer in the Atlantic who was lamenting success addicts, the people who miss recitals and birthdays and so on because they're on business trips and all this kind of stuff. And speaking of like language and one-pagers and so on, I had this line that I had written, which is like, how many more world-changing vaccines are going to be delayed because someone has to be home for dinner? And so this idea that like we have to be very careful to see the world through a relationship escalator view, which is need to be home for dinner because you've got a family, you know what I mean? And you don't want to be a neglectful parent, versus like there's some people in the world who, if they want to work 12-hour days, we kind of want them working 12-hour days, and we certainly want them working 12-hour days if they're living their best life. In it. And so, but again, it also can be riskier because you don't have a cushion, right? There's not a second income perhaps that exists that's there. So, but I love the entrepreneurship one because it's an episode about making stuff. I'm obsessed with making things, like I'm obsessed because I have recognized the process of making something is even more important than the actual finishing it. That it's a way to create like a lively life day in and day out. And so I'm thrilled that you've built this company, and I think it's got a shot.
Thank you. Yeah, we're moving into busy candle season right now. So
that's exactly right. Okay, so I'm going to present one.
Okay.
And then we'll finish up by talking about Julie's, and then your last one, Kim.
Okay.
So one of my most meaningful episodes. I mean, I don't want to play favorites. They're all my children. But one of mine that has reshaped the way I think about things is the Solo's Promise episode with Kimberly Kessler. So that's the second part of a 2-part episode. The first episode is, are you the hero in the story of your life? And so this is an idea that I care a lot about. Like, so I believe that single people, the solos, need to see themselves as an important person, and living a life that has energy, that has challenge, that has growth. And so I think one of the things that we really struggle with, especially if you step away from the normal narrative of what you're supposed to do as an adult, is you need another narrative. You need another story. So if the story is not going to be go to school, graduate, get a job, meet someone, get married, have kids, raise kids,
get divorced,
sorry, retire, die, right? So that's the normal thing. Once you start cutting those things out, you start cutting out the marriage, the kids, and all these kinds of things out, you don't have the same narrative. And I was searching for a narrative, and I initially and prematurely settled on the hero's journey as a narrative. So Joseph Campbell's The Hero of a Thousand Faces. It is a very common story structure, the archetype of the hero, and so on. And so in the first episode with Kim, we talk about the hero's journey. And we talk about movies and stories that have that structure, and they're pervasive. They're the stories of mythology. There's the stories of Indiana Jones and so on. And at the end of that episode, she drops this bomb on me. And she goes, Pete, this is all well and good, but actually I don't think that the hero's journey, I'm getting chills talking about this. I have like goosebumps right now. I actually don't think the hero's journey is the best story for the solo. And I'm like, what? We just talked for an hour, 15 minutes. And she says there's an alternative, a complementary narrative that's more feminine nature, and it has its roots in fairy tales, not in mythology, and that's called The Virgin's Promise. And so this woman, Kim Hudson, this is much more recent than Joseph Campbell, identified an alternative story structure. And instead of one which is very like robust, going out into the world and slaying dragons, this is one about learning to live your true self, right? Becoming your full self, blossoming. So it's an internal, it's not an external narrative, it's an internal one. So I called the episode The Solo's Promise. Can we as single people realize and recognize our promise? So that's, Kim, this is what's so exciting about you being new to this, because you're having this awakening. You've never left Boulder. You've never left your house in order to have this change, right? You didn't have to be Luke Skywalker and leave the planet that you grew up on in order to have the transformation. So this is the story of Cinderella, right? This is the story of Frozen. This is the story of one of my favorites that she talked about, Billy Elliot. So if you've seen Billy Elliot is about this young boy who grows up in this, steel town in the UK, and his dad's very blue collar and masculine and wants him to box, but Billy wants to dance. And so, Billy realizes his promise in Billy Elliot and becomes a dancer, becomes a good dancer, and becomes accepted by the community. He forces the community to accept him by being his true self. And I think that is a powerful idea. And what it suggests, and these are loose thoughts at this point. I'm going to do a solo thoughts later in the year where I properly articulate this. But I've been fussing around with thinking about this. So I talk about this as recognition. So we've talked a lot about recognition. To recognize the world for what it is, the human domestication that we are faced with. The world is trying to get us to behave the way it wants us to behave. So that there's a recognition. Then there's an act of resistance. That is, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that because I don't like being told what to do. No, it's not that at all. I'm not going to do that because that's not me. Because that's not my best life. That's not my best path. And what follows from that act of resistance is reinvention. To reinvent your life as a solo, to be your best life. And I think that's what I've seen this with you, Julie, because we've been friends for 16 years now. Kim, you're a much newer friend, but I've seen both of you do this in different ways at different times, where you are different people than when I first met you. You have different values. You're both of you are so much more powerful now than when I first met you. So, for example, Julie, you do something that I love, which is you do mountain bike rides. You do not cancel a mountain bike ride for a man.
Oh, hell no.
No way. But that was an evolution. You know what I mean? Where you were just like, this brings me joy. This makes my life better. I'm going to have this till I die. I don't know who this schmuck is. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't deserve any special treatment. He's not more important than my mountain bike and my mountain, in this way. And so I've already talked about yours, Kim. And I think that to recognize how the world is trying to get you to behave, to resist it, and then to change yourself. So one of the elements of the Virgin's Promise is called dressing the part. So when Cinderella puts on the ball gown, she is transformed into Cinderella, into her true being in that sense. And so that's why I liked the clothing solo episode, for example, because
I like that episode a lot.
You know what? It's done surprisingly well. It's quickly become one of the more popular episodes. And so that Solo's Promise one, like, it's such a powerful idea, because I think what it can do is it can give you a narrative that's different than the one, and it explains what life is like at Thanksgiving dinner for single people.
Right.
And so it can also then give you a chance to be able to resist, so you don't have to be on the defensive. You can just say, what do you mean by that? That's an act of resistance, is to say, what do you mean by that? It's there. So that's that's one of the ones that has been really very big. It's so big, I bought the book, and on a recent reading retreat, I read it and took 12 pages of notes.
Wow.
On it.
Wait, I want to know what a reading retreat is.
Oh, so it's like, I don't have trouble writing. Like, I don't have trouble making stuff, but sometimes my pile of books gets so big that I will go somewhere. I'll go somewhere. I'll get a hotel. I'll bring like 12 to 20 books and tablets of yellow legal tablets and a bunch of pens. And I'll just go and read for like hours a day.
Wow.
And go through all these books. So sometimes, like, I'll spend 6 hours on a book, and sometimes I'll spend 30 minutes on a book, kind of thing, depending on the book. What's that?
What's the name of the book you wrote 12 pages of notes?
The Virgin's Promise.
Okay.
The Kim Hudson book.
Okay.
It's there. Yeah. All right. So, Julie, you want to do the next one?
Yes. I loved the superheroes episode, and I think part of it was William. I mean, he is so entertaining, and like you said, you wanted to find people who are, how'd you word it? Not the best at what they do, but the most enthusiastic about their knowledge base.
Yeah, to use, I got this from my Humor Code co-author, Joel Warner, magnificent obsessives. So William is a magnificent obsessive. So the episode is called Why Are Superheroes Single? And Kim was the co-host on it. That was very early on. It's like episode 3 or 4. It's there. Yes.
Yeah. And that one, again, empowering, just feeling, it was very entertaining and then empowering. And what just popped into my brain, and Pete, since you just re-listened to episode 1, I just remembered I came up with a single superhero girl name in episode 1. What was it?
Bachelor Girl.
Oh, it was Bachelor Girl. Yes.
I'm writing that down.
You need little action figures.
Totally.
Yeah.
Bachelor Girl. Anyway.
So the timing of this one is great because in that episode, I start talking about being the director in the movie of your life. The idea that that life's not happening to you, you're happening to life. And I think that's an important idea. Yeah. William Cuskin is, he's got this switch and he just flips this switch and he becomes just, obviously he's a world expert on superheroes, so that certainly helps.
Yeah.
But he also is entertaining. That's good. And I think the issue is he answers the question, why are superheroes? And it's because being a superhero benefits from being unencumbered.
Right.
When you don't have to be home for dinner, you can be out fighting the Joker. We don't want our superheroes to have to go on a family vacation, right? We want them in Gotham working all the time, and so there's something about doing this. You do this job better, you're actually worse off partnered as a superhero. Though one of the things that's fascinating about superheroes is that they're not always alone, right? There are teams of superheroes, right? There's the Avengers, there's the X-Men, there's Fantastic Four. And so, keeping with my, this idea that to flourish as a single person is you need to build a team. I like the fact that superheroes might be lone wolves, might be loners, but they also might be part of a team.
And building community. They have their community that they connect with, and they have similar values and all of that.
And of course, one of the things about superheroes that I think superhero teams is no one has the same powers. So they're complementary in that sense, that's there. Okay, so Kim, the last thing about you that I've seen a major change is how you have opened yourself to dating.
Yes. Yeah.
That you have opened yourself to dating, which I recognize is something that is challenging to do. It's not been easy for you to do. And is that the perfect introduction to your last favorite episode?
Yeah, so it's my last favorite and most favorite, probably.
Okay, good.
It's my most favorite because I was telling Julie, I feel like it was curated, especially for me. I feel like you did this episode because I was constantly texting you. Yeah. I would text you questions. I'm like, okay, how do you meet people? How do you not get on the apps? What do you do? And you did this episode and it was so fun. You had so many different perspectives. It was the male perspective, it was Dahlia, who you had on another episode, and Jill, who was on another episode as well. And you just have 3 different personalities and 3 different perspectives. And I think, it was so fun. The chemistry of all 3 of you together was great. That after listening to it that week, I booked 6 dates in a week.
Woo! Wow.
It was a lot. I was exhausted. But it was a lot. And it was just a different approach. I think it was the first time in my life anyone had ever given me permission to just date for fun and date without expectation, and I know we had talked in episode 1 about, since you're not looking to get married or have essentially a lifelong partner, maybe if you would date people outside of who you would normally date. And Julie, I think it was you who said you're just looking for, did I have fun on this experience and would I like to do it again? And having that approach was like, there's guys I went out with I would have never considered going out with. And, it was just a blast to meet people and have conversations. And, some of them are friends. Some of them I've hooked up with other people for business ventures, so you just don't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, so that's great. So the episode title was How to Go on a Date.
Oh yeah, sorry. I got super excited and got
and Dahlia's a professional dating coach.
Yes.
And now it's my turn to out you, Kim. Or do you want to say it?
No,
or
you can go ahead. You do it.
So I've been doing, so Dahlia's a professional dating coach. Jill's good at dating. I'm semi good at dating. And so but one of the things that Dahlia says is stop putting so much pressure on a first date. It's 2 hours of your time. You don't know where it's going to go. Maybe it turns into something that's really good. Maybe the person becomes a friend. Maybe they become a business partner. Maybe you hook them up with another friend. Like, let's just go out and approach it with a sense of fun and possibility versus all this pressure for it to be.
Go out and chill out.
Well said. Yes. So I have been playing around with, I've been calling it the Generosity Project. So this happened as a result of, this will be a callback to the psychedelics episode. I did mushrooms in 2019 for the first time. And I didn't have any major breakthroughs. The biggest breakthrough I had was I was trying to figure out, am I generous? That was sort of the problem I was tussling with in my head, because along the trip, I ran into a guy who is incredibly generous, and I was sort of comparing myself to him. And we don't have time to answer the question of whether I'm generous or not, but I hatched this plan that I was going to look for opportunities to spend a few $100s on friends. But the goal would be, not on all my friends, on some friends, a limit of like about $300. And the idea was I'm going to try to identify situations where I can spend about that amount of money, but the potential reward is infinite. Right. So it's like a 10x investment. So for example, I had a friend who had knee problems, couldn't run. And I was like, well, you need to go see Charlie Merrill. So Charlie was a previous guest. He's a physical therapist. He's the best. Like, he's absolutely the best. Charlie doesn't take insurance. So I paid for 2 sessions for her to see Charlie. At the end of second, she can run again. Right? Like,
that's very cool.
That's like, so I'm on the lookout for those things. Well, Kim gave me one of those opportunities, and I treated her to a coaching session with Dahlia.
Oh, yeah.
After the episode.
I'm bright red right now.
And Kim, how did it go?
It changed my life. It changed my life. It was honestly the best present anyone had ever given me in my whole life. Because Dahlia is not a therapist. And she was able, she's a coach. And therefore she can say, this is what you need to do. Stop doing these things, which your therapist can't do, So she just, pointed out patterns to me, and I don't know. It was life-changing. And now dating is this very fun, entertaining thing I can do when I want to and take a break from when I don't want to do it. That's kind of what I've been, and
hold on. You're being a little abstract.
About this?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
About my dating.
Yeah.
Well, you're being a little abstract. Like, okay. So give an example of something a transformation you had as a result of that coaching session.
Okay. Well, one of the things she pointed out to me were, my patterns with men, and I tend to go for men where it's, I'm giving too much. Like, I'm the one reaching out. I'm the one trying to set plan. I'm the caregiver, and she was like, don't do that. Don't be the caregiver. It's not your job to make sure someone else is having a good time. She's like, it's not your job to keep the conversation going. So like, I'd be out with these guys and I wouldn't ask questions. Like, I wouldn't make it my responsibility. If there was an awkward pause, I'd let it sit, and not say anything.
Rush in.
Yeah. And eventually they'd say something, what else was it? I don't know. It was, there was so much. Just, like for her, dating is a numbers game. Go out with everyone. It's just a cup of coffee, so I'd meet sometimes 2 guys a night or an afternoon for a cup of coffee back to back. I'd show up for the second one, like jacked up on caffeine, but
yeah, that's good. I just wanted people to get an idea of, of how that works. So Kim is very good about communicating. She sent me the nicest text after the session. which I was thrilled to hear. It's just, so it's nice to see these things happening. Okay. So I think we're going to bring it to a close here. I want to finish with a few things that I'm looking forward to. Okay. So, one is that I'm going to start doing some mini series with this. So I had a little sort of mini series about marriage at one point where I did 2 or 3 episodes in a row that were sort of marriage focused. I am currently working on one on singles in the marketplace. And that's going to be an episode on the rise of solo living, how there are more of us than ever, both in terms of number and percentage. And this trend is largely worldwide. We're going to do an episode on selling to singles, which Julie is going to be part of. So we're going to try to bring the band back together for that. And then I'm doing an episode on the best innovations for singles. So what has been invented in the world that makes single living better, possible, and so on. The other sort of mini series of sorts that I'm planning on, I don't have a title for it, but I'm going to do 3 episodes. This was inspired by the solo caregiver episode, the idea that singles disproportionately caregive their elderly parents because you've got more time, you've got more flexibility. I got to raise these kids, hey brother, hey sister, will you take care of this? So this is an extension of that. So we're going to talk about aging single. So what is it that you might need to take into account as you get older and might be on your own? Retiring single, how that might be different, and then dying single.
Ugh.
And so what are the afterlife considerations, right? So think about it. If you're married with children and you die, it's pretty clear what you do with your shit.
Yeah, because you're on the escalator.
That's right. Yes. The escalator has ended and, that other person gets all your shit. And so, what is it, and so I've got some fun ideas about what does a solo will look like? How might it be different than a partnered will, and so on.
The dogs get.
And then I'm going to shoot. That's right. Kim, if you die, I don't want your dogs. Don't worry, you're not. I'm not going to outlive you. That's not a problem. I'm going to try to shoot for some bigger names. I want to get Whoopi Goldberg on the podcast. Why not aim high?
Yeah.
Right. So if you know Whoopi Goldberg, let me know, folks.
Or if you're listening, Whoopi, contact.
It's got to be 6 degrees of separation, right?
Yeah, that's true. You never know. We're not going to do bonus material for this episode. I've been doing less of it because the episodes have been going longer and longer, but I'm going to start putting the bonus episode in. It'll be in the Slack channel. It's going to become private and part of the community. And then lastly, the big goal is that this is not a podcast. This becomes a movement. This is bigger than a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to start thinking about this as a movement. And I need to get some books about movements for my next reading retreat to figure out how do you start a movement, because I have no idea.
I'm an expert on starting movements.
Ah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, she's very cool.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Okay.
The other thing I would like to see as a listener is
please.
You have a lot of themes that come up in multiple episodes. Ask for What You Want is one that we talked about here. And I just, in some format, maybe it's not an episode, but maybe it is, just kind of reiterating those themes.
Julie.
Oh,
we know where that's going to be.
Where?
I need to write a book.
I love it.
Yes, that would be fantastic. You need to write a one-pager.
Already done.
I'm not surprised.
Kim, do you have anything that you would add for future?
No, I mean, I enjoy the episode. I enjoy all the episodes. I enjoy the surprise of not knowing what the next episode is going to be when I tune in, because it's everywhere. It's all over the place. And I like that, and I might end up listening to something I normally wouldn't gravitate towards. That's surprising me.
Yeah, it's hard to judge an episode by its title.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. I try to title them in ways that are sort of appealing, but it's hard to know that. So the top episodes, now, of course, the top episodes are among the earliest episodes. So Introducing Solo is number 1. The Science of Single Living is number 2. What Makes a Life Remarkable is number 3. What is Ethical Non-Monogamy is number 4. Living Remarkably During a Pandemic, the Coronavirus Edition, is number 5. But what's really fascinating is the next 5 is what Kristen Newman was doing while you were breeding, Dating Friends and Sleeping with Strangers, a Valentine's Day episode. That's a really good one. My goodness.
That was funny.
Why Are Superheroes Single? Number 9, Boxing.
Boxing.
Really fascinating. Yep. And number 10, Financial Freedom with Money Amy. Again, those tend to be on the earlier side just because there have been more time for people to be able to listen to them. Yeah, it's true. Sometimes there's a nugget in an episode that makes the entire episode worth listening to, in my opinion, at least. All right, you two, 50 episodes later, here we are. We're still kicking. It feels good. I'm working harder than ever on this, and it's been totally worth it.
Yeah, I love it.
I want to say...
Yeah, congratulations. 50. That's quite an accomplishment.
It's very good. It's a good start. So it's not Joe Rogan, but we're just getting going. Well, I want to say thank you to the two of you who have dedicated, time, energy, thought, and then your wonderful personalities to making this a good experience, both for me and for listeners. So I want to say thank you to you, and cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.org. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.